Chapter 1531. Infinite Thousand Swords Flow. Under the cover of night, the entire Edo castle turned into a sea of maggots. Those huge maggots, the smallest of which were as long as an adult's arm, and the largest ones were even terrifying monsters of 1 or 2 meters. They squirmed, like twisted rivers, rolling towards the area of the immortal mountain, one wave after another. Even Zhang Yi frowned when he saw such a scene, and resisted the urge to vomit. The current situation is really difficult to deal with. These are hundreds of thousands of maggots that can devour energy bodies. If you want to annihilate them all, the best way is to use physical attacks. However, the method of Lord of War can only be used once in a short period of time. At least for now, Zhang Yi can't reload those guns and cannons. But his other methods are difficult to kill such a large number of maggots. Even the alien space he is proud of will be eroded by these terrifying insects and slowly destroyed. Under the immortal mountain, in the sea of maggots, the voice of the evil boy slowly sounded. Chaos, you are indeed very strong. This time, you have at least cost me more than 100,000 humans. Therefore, you must die. The body of the evil boy emerged from the sea of maggots. But this time, he had completely lost his human appearance. What appeared in front of Zhang Yi was a twisted and hideous monster. It was not a human, but a creature with 2 pairs of black-gray translucent wings, 8 slender limbs, and a black-gray hard shell all over its body. From the shell on its head, a mouth part like a spike extended. It looked like a mosquito more than 10 meters long, or a disgusting and smelly mantis with wings. Zhang Yi looked at him with a serious look. So, you killed hundreds of thousands of residents in Edo for yourself, right? Upon hearing this, the evil boy immediately retorted, "What a joke. I gave them a second life. No, I extended their lives." He flew into the air at the same level as Zhang Yi and happily introduced his masterpiece to Zhang Yi. Each of them has my nomadic worms in their bodies. With nomadic worms, they can live like in the past without having to worry about being frozen to death by the extreme cold weather. You know what? I used to be a maggot in the city, a homeless vagrant. So what I fear most is freezing to death in the middle of the night. Now, they don't have to worry about that problem. And they have my nomadic worms in their bodies, so no matter how serious the injuries are, they can be cured. They don't have to do anything, they don't have to think about anything, they just need to exist as the seeds of the Yamato nation. To continue the offspring of this nation. What's wrong with that? He raised his weird mantis head high, as if he was enjoying everything he did. And I am the real savior of Neon. Zhang Yi couldn't refute the evil boy's approach. Maybe what the evil boy said was right. Repeating the same life every day, without continued memories, but being able to live in peace, may not be a kind of happiness. But unfortunately, today, Zhang Yi came. Looking at the dense maggots below, they've gathered together and surged towards the sky. Behind them are the 500,000 residents of Edo. But does Zhang Yi care? Of course not. I just wanted to take back what belongs to my Huashu country and then leave. Zhang Yi raised the sword in the tree in his hand. The green long sword was now stained with a layer of silver gray, emitting a faint cold light. The second posture of the sword in the tree, after integrating the nanorobots, can make it become a tough metal sword like Holy Judgment, which is even sharper. Now, I have to turn the whole Edo into an empty city. Zhang Yi has no interest in things like massacre. Although he is not a soft-hearted man, he is not a bloodthirsty butcher. But if he has to, he will not hesitate. Then just kill. Although the speed will be slower, you don't really think that I am weak in close combat, right? Zhang Yi waved his left hand, and with his body as the radius, within a range of 3 kilometers, the flow of time slowed down rapidly. The speed bonus is 100 times. In his eyes, the sea of squirming maggots seemed to be still. If you want to kill the evil boy, you have to destroy the entire sea of maggots, because these things will provide him with energy. So, just kill him slowly. Zhang Yi leaned over and fell, and the silver tree sword in his hand became huge, turning into a 40-meter-long sword, and then he aimed at the sea of maggots and chopped it down fiercely. This is destined to be a protracted battle. However, some people don't seem to know that a certain person has been known for his endurance since his debut. On the other hand, Liang Yu's fight was dangerous. She was dragged into the endless sword domain by Ming Haizongji. Here, there are swords and knives stuck in the ground everywhere, and Ming Haizongji's thousand swords flow can be perfectly exerted. His sword skills are extremely skilled and tricky, and the key is that the entire battlefield can be used by him. The handoff sword, the two-sword flow, the flying sword cluster, all kinds of means made Liang Yu overwhelmed. And Liang Yu's fighting style was also very steady. One person, one sword, and the blade formed a Tai Chi circle around him. The blue mind energy circulated around him, which could easily shake off every blade attacking him. Thousands of swords were used by him smoothly, and no sword was redundant. Infinite. Thousand swords flow. Ming Haizong held two famous swords in both hands. All the swords on the battlefield instantly rose into the air, and then pointed at Liang Yu. He slowly bent his knees and rushed towards Liang Yu in an instant. At the same time, thousands of swords fell from all directions. All directions with Liang Yu as the center, without blind spots, were all fatal attacks. In an instant, thousands of strikes. And the speed was so fast that it was amazing, and there was also a frontal surprise attack from the sword holder himself. Faced with such an offensive, Liang Yu made an incredible move. She closed her eyes. Since it was an attack without blind spots, it would be impossible to capture every blade attacking her with the naked eye. However, the mind's eye is invisible. She held Long Ming in both hands, with the blade pointed diagonally at the ground. When she closed her eyes, a whole new world opened up. With her as the center, outside the range of 500 meters, there was an endless dark void. But within 500 meters, everything was clearly visible and slowed down. A true master is always good at learning the abilities of others and turning them into his own. This move came from the master of eclipse swordsmanship she had killed before, Niden Ichiryu Menkyo Kaden, Tsukamoto Nobunaga. Perhaps Tsukamoto Nobunaga's strength is far inferior to that of the current Naromi Suji, but in terms of swordsmanship, he does represent the top level of Neon. Self-centered, within a small space, the blade can instantly reach any place. This move is called Tianyuan. Chapter 1532 Whetstone. Ming Haizongji rushed over with two swords, carrying thousands of swords, to end Liang Yu's life in one move. But Liang Yu only did one thing, closing his eyes and feeling all the movements around him. Then, at the moment when the swords were approaching, he raised his hand and swung the sword. The blue mind energy traveled along the blade, turning into a long river of mind energy like a dragon and snake, and the sharp blades intertwined into a blue net of mind energy. Swish, 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 swish. The mind energy cut through those famous swords without making a sound of metal collision, but it seemed to cut off hair. Countless swords, including neon swords, were cut off. But the most fatal blow also came to Liang Yu at this gap. The two swords in Ming Haizongji's hands were the real killer. A long sword chopped towards Liang Yu's head, while the short sword was ready to attack the waist and abdomen. Liang Yu closed his eyes and chose to dodge the sharp edge in the face of this attack. After dodging Ming Haizongji's extremely fast sword, he slashed at his back with a backhanded sword. Everything happened in a split second, so fast that it was difficult for the human eye to catch it. Ming Haizongji's pupils shrank suddenly. He didn't expect that his confident killing blow would also fail. He had to dodge Liang Yu's sword. The two passed each other sideways in midair, and no one was injured. But in midair, clatter fell to the ground and a pile of broken swords fell. Ming Haizongji's thousand-sword style was broken by Liang Yu's one-sword style. How could this happen? Ming Haizongji couldn't believe the reality in front of him. His sword was already fast enough, and with thousands of blades, he thought that there would be no warrior in the world who could block his attack head-on. But Liang Yu did it. She was even faster, and she cut off 1,000 famous swords in just a moment. Liang Yu looked at Ming Haizongji silently, and then twisted her arm holding the sword. Sure enough, the absorption of the source of God is faster in battle. Is this the key? The function of the key is to open the door of Ipsilon for you. But to really step into this field, you still have to rely on your personal talent and hard work. This process may be fast or slow. Like Zhang Yi, he only used a little bit of the source of God as a guide and successfully promoted in just 1 week. If it is slow, for example, Hua as a strange beast has a poor understanding, and it has also grown in constant fighting. Especially under the Qinling Mountains, the battle against the centipede benefited it a lot. At this time, Liang Yu also felt this kind of happiness in the fight between life and death. She looked at Ming Haizongji with some excitement. Let's continue. Ming Haizongji noticed that something was wrong. Are you using me as a whetstone? He pointed the sword in his hand at Liang Yu, furious. This is a great disrespect to a samurai. Liang Yu said, respect must be won by one's own strength, not by the grace of others. The decision-making power has always been in the hands of the strong. She held the knife and walked towards Ming Haizongji step by step. Ming Haizongji only felt that the blue spirit lingering around her was becoming more and more terrifying, as if some terrible demon was slowly awakening. Even when her feet stepped on the ground, her steps were no longer solid, and even the footprints on the ground disappeared. Ming Haizongji's eyes suddenly darkened. He reached out and threw away the short knife in his left hand, and then held the long knife in his right hand with all his strength. It's time to let you see the strength of my sword flow. Liang Yu didn't say much, but every time she took a step forward, her momentum would be 3 points stronger. I have seen your sword skills. The 1,000 swords flow is indeed interesting, but the others, Liang Yu shook her head regretfully, are lackluster. It's time, it's over. Ming Haizongji's eyebrows stood up, and the contempt in Liang Yu's words made him furious. Who do you think you are? How dare you talk to me like that? I am the captain of the first squad of the Yumal court. Liang Yu just said calmly. The one standing in front of you now is the last grandmaster of Huashu country, the descendant of the Lightning Five Whips, a wooing-level martial arts athlete, and a bodyguard of Xingjing Special Agency. He is a capable general under the Chaos, the top master in the Jiangnan region. A warrior codenamed Nine Heavens Mysterious Woman. Ming Haizongji looked around in confusion. You brought other people with you? How despicable. What about the one-on-one, glorious duel? Liang Yu's breathing stagnated, and then she helplessly put her hand on her forehead. It's time to end. She gave an order to her own mecha. Release the training mode. The mechanical voice came immediately. Received. The training mode has been released. Release the physical restrictions on the master and provide regular power blessing. In an instant, the feeling of overweight that bound Liang Yu disappeared. She moved her arms and felt a lot lighter. Well, it feels good. She waved the dragon roar in her hand and then chopped down a mountain in the distance with a strong knife. The blue energy turned into a huge blade light, falling from the sky to the earth. Boom! In just a moment suddenly, the short mountain was split in half, and the ground beneath his feet also cracked into a hideous gap. Ming Haizongji was stunned, and he staggered back a few steps. You, how did you suddenly become so strong? Liang Yu looked at him in surprise. What do you mean by suddenly becoming strong? I just lifted the seal on myself. She looked at her arm holding the knife and said lightly, After all, I am now facing you, who are still only at the Delta level. If I don't seal part of my own power, I am afraid I will accidentally kill you. It's not easy to meet a warrior. If I don't have a good fight with him and hone my skills, wouldn't it be a waste? Some people are only 9,900 points at the peak of the Delta level, while others are already 9999, half a step into the realm of Ipsilon. However, the gap between them is not just 99 points. It is just a theoretical value that gives Ming Haizongji the illusion that he is close to Ipsilon. In other words, Liang Yu today is equivalent to the lost soul of Xingdao. Ming Haizongji swallowed his saliva and then yelled, Don't underestimate me, you bastard. The pride of the Neon Samurai is not something you can... He opened his mouth wide, wanting to shout out his beliefs proudly. But unfortunately, he never had the chance to say the second half of the sentence. Liang Yu's long sword slashed across his neck and threw his head high into the air. The speed was so fast that he could hardly imagine it. Liang Yu leaped over and grabbed the long hair on his head. Feeling the origin of Ming Hai Suji, she just said boredly, "You are no longer useful to me. You should take you back and give you to Quran or Xian and the others." Chapter 1533. Battle against the Bull Demon. On another battlefield, Deng Shintong encountered the captain of the second squad of the Yumiting, Nyogue Maeda Yuichiro. His gigantic body was full of oppressive power, like a small mountain. He looked down at Deng Shintong and aimed his huge fist directly at Deng Shintong and smashed it hard. Bang! The fist smashed a huge deep pit on the ground, but Maeda Yuichiro did not feel the touch of flesh and blood. The next moment, a voice came from behind him. "What are you hitting?" Maeda Yuichiro's pupils shrank suddenly, and he turned his head to look behind. What he just hit was not Deng Shintong's body, but the phantom he created with light. Deng Shintong's sword had already left his body, and the bright white light enveloped his whole body, making him look like a god. The surrounding space was only pure white, and Maeda Yuichiro could not see anything. But on his back, a strong pain directly enveloped him. Deng Shintong's sword light almost penetrated his body. But when the sword touched the bones, it was suddenly clamped tightly by the muscles. Maeda Yuichiro couldn't see anything, so he punched Deng Shintong behind him. That thick dark red arm was like a huge pillar. If it hit Deng Shintong head-on, his small body would definitely not be able to bear it. Deng Shintong was not in a hurry and pressed the switch on the hilt. A stream of venom gushed out from the blood groove of the sword and entered Maeda Yuichiro's body. Then he struggled to pull out the sword, then stepped on Maeda Yuichiro's body and retreated violently. Maeda Yuichiro couldn't see anything, so he could only go crazy, stepping on the ground under his feet with 8 feet and then swinging his fists based on his feelings. Deng Shintong was not in a hurry. He was slowly waiting for the toxin to take effect. With such a huge body, it takes longer for the toxin to reach the heart with the blood. Soon, Maeda Yuichiro felt dizzy, and a strong sense of nausea came. Boom! His huge body almost fell to the ground, which also made him realize that Deng Shintong's sword was poisonous. But this was not difficult for him at all. He pulled his big hand on his back and tore off the injured flesh and blood. His strong physique and self-healing ability allowed him to resist this kind of toxin attack very well. Deng Shintong was not in a hurry at all. Now, after years of experience, he has become a master of practical combat. He has enough patience to slowly kill his opponent. This kind of big guy who has no way to dissolve his ability will fall into a disadvantage at the beginning of the battle. The Great Shumi Illusion. The cold white light shone in all directions, wrapping up this mountaintop and forming a huge white sphere. Maeda Yuichiro was suddenly able to see things. He saw that the night passed, and the immortal mountain suddenly returned to daytime. Moreover, it was spring, and the cherry blossoms on the mountain were in bloom, and the pink cherry blossoms fell with the wind. On the Shinto of the immortal mountain, women in kimonos brought their children and came here with lunch boxes to enjoy the cherry blossoms. Those familiar faces were Maeda Yuichiro's deceased family members. Illusion? Maeda Yuichiro immediately realized that he was under an illusion. But what he saw and even the touch of his body were extremely real. Even the temperature was no longer cold, but warm and gentle like spring. Can it affect even my 5 senses? Maeda Yuichiro murmured. Then, wouldn't it be fine if I just closed my eyes? The condition for being under an illusion is to see the light released by Deng Shintong, so to deal with his ability as long as you can't see, everything can be resolved. Deng Shintong didn't care. Unless you are born blind, people can't see things, and even the strongest masters will be greatly restricted. Especially the giant bull ghost in front of you like a war machine. Now, aren't you just a toy in my hand? Deng Shintong waved his hand and threw out a dozen blue crystal bombs, which were scattered around Maeda Yuichiro. After the blue crystal bomb exploded, It generated amazing energy, and it contained strong toxins that would attach to Maeda Yuichiro's body. Boom! The earth was shaken, and the dirt flew everywhere. Even Nyogue's strong body was strongly affected at this time, and his body almost fell sideways. However, this time, Maeda Yuichiro also felt the position of Deng Shintong. He turned around and punched Deng Shintong hard. Deng Shintong immediately jumped high, and Maeda Yuichiro's thick arms swept through the mountains and forests, and a large number of trees were flattened by him like sweeping garbage. Good intuition. Deng Shintong's jet flying device behind him started. He was in midair, with his left hand drawing a gun and shooting at Maeda Yuichiro continuously. The weapon he used was not much worse in terms of power, except that the material of the bullet was not as good as the metal. Bang! 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 The large pistol fired dozens of bullets in his hand. This pistol that can load 40 bullets at a time is actually a small one-handed charge gun. The origin bullet shot into the flesh of Maeda Yuichiro, splashing a large amount of blood. Even a body that has been tempered by thousands of hammers could not withstand the latest weapon of Deng technology. But compared with the huge body of Maeda Yuichiro, these wounds can only be regarded as tickling. Nyogue became even more angry. Blindness made him lose his sense of security, and at the same time, he was more eager to kill the enemy in front of him. He punched towards the sky, and Deng Shintong dodged flexibly. But soon, Nyogue picked up a huge stone from the ground and smashed it hard at Deng Shintong. The huge stone, as big as a truck, was like a high-speed moving artillery shell. Deng Shintong was almost hit. It flew directly past Deng Shintong's body. Deng Shintong couldn't help but frown. Is it so sensitive? Even if there are some movements, it is hard to escape its perception. The bull ghost seemed to have found a way to deal with it. He reached out his hand into the hillside of the immortal mountain and grabbed one huge piece of earth and stone after another. Soon, the boulders smashed towards Deng Shintong in the air like a meteor shower. The simple and unpretentious means of attack were the most difficult for Deng Shintong to deal with. Because he did not have the defensive means to deal with physical attacks like zhang, yi, whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The boulders kept attacking him in the air, making Deng Shintong a little tired to deal with it. He had to draw his sword, and the white supernatural power turned into dazzling light, condensed on the sword body, and then stabbed out with a sword, smashing a boulder head-on. But then, more boulders flew towards his body. Chapter 1534. First time. Deng Shintong kept dodging in the air, and Nyogue closed his eyes, making his illusion attack ineffective. However, Nyogue's attack seemed to have locked Deng Shintong's position. No matter how he dodged, Nyogue could quickly catch up with him. What did he use to determine my position? Smell or sound? Or... Deng Shintong looked behind him. In order to facilitate his movements, he turned on the jet device. This made him move faster and able to attack from the air. After all, on the ground, Nyogue posed a great threat to him. Is it because of this? He realized that in addition to making noise, the jet device would also generate high heat energy. Maybe this was the factor that Nyogue used to confirm his position. Deng Shintong's eyes became solemn, and he decisively turned off the jet device and fell downward in a free fall. Although Nyogue closed his eyes, he could still hear the sound of the wind as he fell. Today, the wind is a little noisy. Without hesitation, he rushed towards Deng Shintong with his 8 legs and at the same time picked up 2 towering trees as weapons and smashed them towards the area where Deng Shintong landed. After Deng Shintong landed, he immediately ran along the arc without hesitation. He drew a circle around the Nyogue. But on the surface, it was obvious that the Nyogue with a huge body had more advantages. He could withstand Deng Shintong's 100 attacks. However, his attack only needed to hit Deng Shintong once to almost declare the battle over. Even if he turned on the blessing of the holy body, he would be seriously injured if he was hit by the Nyogue. The Nyogue held 2 giant trees, like waving 2 samurai swords, sweeping the ground frantically. The best way to deal with a blind man is to make him lose his target. Deng Shintong threw more than a dozen bombs again, without hesitation. But this time, the bombs were scattered. Boom! The sound of explosions gradually sounded in different locations. This time, the Niugui could not accurately judge where Deng Shintong was. Deng Shintong raised the long sword in his hand, his eyes fixed on the huge and strong body of the bull ghost. We must hit the flaw to have a chance to open a hole in his body. He slowly accumulated strength and made a fencing posture. At the same time, in the space surrounding the bull ghost, invisible light gates had already been arranged and formed under Deng Shintong's maneuvers. Heaven etching. Deng Shintong stabbed forward with his sword, and a huge white sword light bounced back and forth between more than a dozen light gates, and finally shot towards the area below the bull ghost's coccyx. 1,000 years of killing. Puff. The white lightsaber pierced directly, and Deng Shintong could clearly feel that the bull ghost's huge body froze for a moment. The next second, moo! The bull ghost raised his head and roared in anger and pain at the sky. Even a body made of steel and iron bones is extremely fragile in that place. He angrily backhanded a punch, but it ended up hitting nothing. The ability of heaven etching is to launch an attack at any position and at any incredible angle, focusing on an unexpected attack. Therefore, it is meaningless to judge the location of Deng Shintong by the angle of attack. It works then. Deng Shintong's mouth curled up an evil arc. Let's continue. Deng Shintong's ability looks the most elegant, but in actual combat, it is extremely evil and even a little despicable. In short, bullying the blind. To face him, you must seal your eyes. After awakening the ability of the heaven etching, you don't even have the chance to judge his position. Niugui's body is indeed strong, and his strength is strong enough to kill Deng Shintong with 3 punches. But under this rogue ability, he has no chance to exert his strength. Heaven etching. Heaven etching. Heaven etching. Under Deng Shintong's torture, Niugui's body was soon opened up one after another, and the hideous wounds made his blood flow freely. In the end, he let out a cry of resentment, and his huge body fell on the immortal mountain. Deng Shintong collected his essence, looked up at the Tianqiu Palace, and then looked at the huge sea of maggots at the foot of the mountain. While trembling in his heart, he ran towards the Tianqiu Palace without hesitation. We must get what we want as soon as possible and leave here. There is no time to waste. Although they have absolute confidence in Zhang Yi, their purpose is clear, which is to take back the treasure, not to fight to the death with the neon aliens here. The task must be completed as soon as possible, otherwise something will change. The third battlefield is where Bailey Chongqing and Uncle Yu and others are fighting against the elite aliens of the Yuma court led by the captain of the third team, Purgatory Star. Yang Xinxin gave them the suggestion of using fluorescent agents to deal with invisible aliens, and Fatty Su immediately followed suit and used it. Sure enough, this move forced Purgatory Star, who had been hiding and looking for an opportunity to assassinate everyone, to show up. She was wearing a dark red leather jacket. Although she was very careful to avoid these blue light spots, she was hard to defend against the fluorescent agent flying everywhere in the wind, and she was finally hit. Damn it! She gritted her teeth and cursed in a low voice. But if that's the case, then I'll defeat you head-on. Purgatory Star made a seal with one hand. Duplicate technique. Her figure became illusory. After a moment, 2 wriggling black shadows slowly split from her body. After falling to the ground, they slowly turned into 2 women who looked exactly like her. One clone pressed on the ground with one hand. Earth escape. With her right hand as the center, the invisible shockwave quickly spread towards the direction where Fatty Su and others were. Soon the ground under their feet began to tremble violently, and the soil and rocks broke apart, trying to bury them. Lu Qiu continued to launch riot sparks in the distance. Purgatory Star's second clone put his left hand in front of his mouth and gathered it. Wind escape. The wild wind gathered and blended with the huge fireballs flying all over the sky, making the flames even more powerful. The main body of Purgatory Star pulled out a samurai sword from its waist and rushed towards Fatty Su in a Z-shaped route. Wind wheel slash. The samurai's sword slashed through the air, and a powerful force instantly tore through the flying gravel around and rushed straight to Fatty Sue's body. Fatty Sue's forehead immediately dripped with cold sweat. This was the first time he faced a strong enemy head-on. This time, I won't retreat again. I can't be a coward all my life. Fatty Sue roared in his heart. Although he was still afraid, after mustering up his courage, he could put life and death aside. In short, it was the credit of adrenaline. Ice armor. A deep blue cold current emerged from his body, and a thick layer of ice armor instantly condensed to cover his body. The knife slashed down, clang. The ice armor shattered all over the ground, but when it touched his exoskeleton armor, it only left a deep scratch. Fatty Sue was surprised and happy. He actually relied on his own strength to block the enemy's attack head-on for the first time. The first time is always so exciting. Chapter 1535 Human Cannon. Fatty Sue's ice armor blocked Purgatory Star's fatal blow, which made him extremely excited. At this time, his body was covered with thick ice armor, and there was also exoskeleton armor and black battle clothes inside. As expected of Zhang Yi's younger brother, his defense was fully pulled. It's time to test the results of my 2.5 years of practice. Fatty Sue took a deep breath, looked directly at Purgatory Star in front of him, and suddenly raised his right hand. Ice will storm. The ice on his right hand spread rapidly, and diamond-shaped ice crystals condensed on his arm, turning into a huge monster arm. Then, facing Purgatory Star, thousands of diamond-shaped ice spikes suddenly shot out. Like a rainstorm of pear blossoms, it covered a large area of space in front. Purgatory Star frowned and made a seal with one hand. Ice escape, ice dragon. A storm vortex quickly formed under her feet, and a large amount of ice and snow rose into the air, condensing into a giant ice and snow dragon, rushing towards the ice and snow storm in front. The two forces collided with each other and then exploded. The flying ice and snow debris in the sky blocked the vision of the surrounding large space. However, soon, Lu Qiandai's riot sparks brought a blazing flame and rushed straight to Fatty Sue and others. "Brother Chunlei, cooperate with me." Bai Chunyu suddenly shouted at this time. Facing the Purgatory Star that could not enter the invisible state, the pressure on everyone was relieved a lot at this time. What's more, they were already in an advantageous position on the battlefield of Bailey Chongqing and Uncle Yu. Bai Chunyu's body shattered with a bang, turning into thousands of drifting ice and snow blades, sweeping towards the Purgatory Star. Fatty Sue also quickly cooperated with Bai Chunyu and increased the output capacity of the blizzard. The two ice and snow aliens took advantage of the time and place in such an environment. At this time, Wu Di finally didn't have to maintain the posture of thousands of floating cannons all the time, and he could free his hands to fight. But his target was not the Purgatory Star. Facing an alien whose ability index was thousands of points higher than his, it would be difficult to kill him in a short time, even if the three of them joined forces. It would be better to solve the troubles around first. So, he turned his head and stared at Lu Qiandai, who had been launching fireball attacks from a distance. The powerful spiritual power emerged from his body as light, and his hair soared into the sky. He clasped his hands together, and the huge spiritual power gathered on his fists along his arms. The dazzling light illuminated all the surrounding areas and attracted everyone's attention. "Such a strong energy," Temple Gate Daruma said with a serious look. Wu Di showed a hideous villain smile on his face and stared at Lu Qiandai, who was setting fire in the distance. "Little girl, as a long-range attack magician, it is a taboo to be in the enemy's field of vision." Lu Qiandai was too far away and could not hear what Wu Di said. It was just that beast-like eyes that made her suddenly feel a strong sense of crisis. However, at this time, the entire Undead Mountain was almost bombed by intense battles without any cover. Even if you want to escape, you will only become a living target on the bare hillside. Wu Di's clenched fists were aimed at Lu Qiandai like cannons, and his arms were stretched out exaggeratedly. Because of the gathering of energy, his whole body was glowing and shining, even giving people a sense of transparency. Seeing this, Purgatory Star shouted in a low voice, "Not good." She drew her sword without hesitation and slashed at Wu Di. Wind wheel slash. The huge wind blade turned like a wheel and slashed towards Wu Di. But at this time, Fatty Sue and Bai Chunyu were not willing to give her such a chance. Ninjas are special professionals who ambush enemies in the shadows. Once exposed to the light, they are not so scary. Fatty Sue took the lead. He bravely ran in front of Wu Di, pressed his hands on the ground, and quickly condensed into a heavy snow mountain. Bai Chunyu turned into millions of incarnations and strangled Purgatory Star from all directions. Boom! Fatty Sue blocked Purgatory Star's attack, and the cannon in Wu Di's hand finally blasted out. Human cannon. The power accumulated for 2.5 seconds burst out from his fists in an instant. In just a moment, it penetrated the nearly 1 kilometer distance between him and Lu Qiandai. The cannon of light turned into a bright beam of light in the night. Even in the distant direction, the light released by Deng Shintong was suppressed by this human cannon for a while. Lu Qiandai is an alien of the release system. She is not good at physical fitness and running. When she realized that this terrible attack was coming towards her, her pupils shrank and the fear of death enveloped her heart. Instinct prompted her to turn around and escape without hesitation, but a moment later, white light covered the sky and the earth, covering her from behind, and caught up with her body in an instant. Boom! After the human cannon passed, it left a semicircular passage of several kilometers on the hillside of the Immortal Mountain, and everything it passed was destroyed. And Lu Qiandai's body had already been directly decomposed by the extremely powerful energy. After using this move, Wu Di's body also appeared briefly. His legs were weak, but his face was full of excitement as he gasped for breath. "I'm the first one to kill," he said to everyone in the communication channel with a smile. Being the first to kill one of the opponents greatly boosted the morale of his own side. Purgatory Star had a bad feeling in his heart at this time. He originally thought that these people were just the opponent's minions, but he didn't expect that everyone's ability index was above 9,000 points. The key is that their equipment is too luxurious. Just relying on the advantage of equipment is enough to increase a person's combat effectiveness by 100 or 200 points. Compared with the aliens in the Jiangnan region with the highest technological level in Huaxu country, the members of the group of Yumading who only know how to wear suits and show off are completely like a group of amateurs. Purgatory Star looked at the battlefield where Teruko Daruma and Kamita Xiaoxing were. There, the two had already fallen behind. Teruko Daruma's combat effectiveness is very strong and can be on par with Bailey Chongqing. But Uncle Yu, who was wearing a heavy mecha, had powerful firepower, and was as skilled in close combat as King Kong, was not someone Kamita could handle. If they continued like this, it would only be a matter of time before they lost. Purgatory Star's heart gradually sank. At this moment, she realized how big the gap was between a country like Japan and the world's top superpowers. "We are holding back the master." Purgatory Star bit her lips hard, feeling annoyed. But she firmly believed that the evil boy would eventually win the final victory. So, under the watchful eyes of Bai Chunyu and Fatty Sue, her long legs slowly stepped back a few steps. Then, she made a move that no one could have imagined. Purgatory Star reached out and slowly unzipped her leather jacket, revealing her naked body.